Hello and welcome back. We are back in the new year. I believe the 12th episode of the Abundant Living Ecuador podcast. Happy New Year to everybody out there. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, all that good stuff. We took a few weeks off. Very busy around the holiday season. It seemed to be a time when everybody wanted to look at real estate. So we regrouped for a few weeks, and we're back today with more information than normal given the recess in podcasts. So we've got a good show for you today. We're excited to chat. A lot of developments here in Ecuador, developments for the company, global developments. So good to be back with you.
Before we get into anything, we got to plug the website, www.abecuador.com. Again, www.a as in apple, b as in boy, ecuador.com. We can be reached toll-free in the office at 888-999-0948. Again, that's 1-888-999-0948.
Great. So I think to start out today's show, it'd be good to just recap for people if you're not familiar with this story, and maybe dig a little deeper if you are, as to what's going on in Ecuador right now. Where does the market stand? What are the opportunities within that? What are the risks within that? So a very brief recap. Ecuador experienced very strong growth over the last several years, a result of political stability, monetary stability, and high oil prices. Huge infrastructure expenditure, so roads, airports, ports, our first class internet, all those kinds of things.
Hydroelectric projects as well.
Schools, were built all over the country. Hospitals were built all over the country. People, were certainly appreciative of those kinds of efforts. And then the bottom fell out on the price of oil. Also, there was a credit expansion during that time, so banks were lending, people were taking out loans, perhaps to some degree for the first time in a long time in Ecuador. So then recently, we've had a confluence of events that have really gone the other direction. So oil prices are very low, as everybody's aware. The government gets somewhere around 50% or more of their revenue from oil. At the same time, the banks have stopped lending, and of course the job market has fallen through or taken a hit, partially due to those things, also partially due to increased rules and regulations surrounding employment. So the credit contraction, along with people not being out of work and less government spending, has put downward pressure on prices, and it's also made a lot of people interested in selling, and for prices you couldn't find even 6 months ago. So a lot of this just happened recently. So that's where we stand today in Ecuador, as far as the real estate market. And then of course there's the political situation, which is a whole added element of the story. It's really an interesting time here. There's the change that we've seen in the almost 3 years or two and a half plus years that we've been here politically, as far as the political environment, and then I'm including in that, of course, things like police and military, and who's popular and why, and the political leanings of the populace and so forth, we've seen dramatic change. I would say, mostly all for the worse, but interesting as well in terms of, where we're at and what's going to happen. So I think, if you've been listening to the podcast or reading our blogs, you're familiar with some tax proposals that were put on the table. Do you remember, was it 6 months ago, 8 months ago, originally?
Originally, I'd say probably, 6 or 7 months ago.
June,
July, August time frame.
Okay. So around summer of 2015.
Yeah, was actually the end of June. I remember
End of
that.
June?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So June 2015, somewhat out of left field, our socialist president down here proposed basically what amounted to a 70 or 75% tax, and there's some exemptions and some language around that, some fine print around that, but
Not much.
not much, right? A 70 to 75% tax on capital gains for real estate, as well as a very large tax, and there's a little more wiggle room within that, but for herencia, which is inheritance. Thank you.
Oh, inheritance.
He was talking out of the mic there.
Yes. It's a bad habit of mine that Jesse always chastises me for off air.
Chastises on nice. So when that happened, there was a lot of protests. The protests seemed to be effective, and the president shelved those proposals. It of course killed the market at that time, spooked everyone. Ecuadorians were even, we're looking to sell properties, get money out of the country, and things like that. We had several deals fall through as a result of the news. Scared us obviously as well. So those are off the table for a period of time. Those are back on the table now, and we have yet to see in what form exactly, but it does look like those may be passed over the next month or two, and then it'll be very interesting to see what response we have from the populace. Because again, as we've also touched on many times in these podcasts and blogs, people here have much more power than they do in a place like the States. Protests mean something. People can rise up and get rid of a government if they so choose. So we have this very interesting situation where a currently very popular president and unpopular equivalent of Congress is looking to pass things also that are also very unpopular, and of course pretending that that's not the case. And then at the same time, there's been very unfortunate ramping up of police and military presence. And then just to touch on, we have a lot of news here, but I guess sort of connected to this, and I think we may have briefly touched on it in our last podcast, but at the end of November, beginning of December, Ecuador passed a constitutional reform package. Basically, it had a number of 16. There were 16 constitutional changes. It passed by 100-8 measure when it was extremely unpopular in the country. So it kind of gives you an idea between the current disconnect between politics and the populace.
4 out of 5 people were against it, and it still passed by that kind of margin.
Yeah, along party lines, like basically the Correa's party, the Alliance, they control Congress by an overwhelming majority, and they just vote whatever the president wants. So part of those constitutional reforms were lifting term limits. So Correa is now legally free to run again, and
that starts after the next presidential term, but who knows, that could change as well too, because if you can just rubber stamp anything that you want, any sort of constitutional amendment that you want to do, well then what guarantee does anybody have that won't change? But currently the term limits last up until the 2021 election.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't even realize that, because I know the political pundits, many of them here, think that now the president is going to run next time. But that's interesting. He's got another legal loophole, I guess, to go through before he can do that.
Yeah.
So lifting term limits, curbing freedom of the press. So basically what they did was they made the media a, quote, public service. So bringing it under the umbrella of something the government has say over. They already had done that to some degree, but this put the finishing touches on it. And they also granted the armed forces, I'm reading from a Wall Street Journal article here that came out on the 3rd of December, granted the armed forces power to assist police in security operations and allowing presidents and other elected officials to run for office indefinitely.
You gotta like how they worded that. The power to assist.
Yeah, right.
We have the power to assist you. We're gonna assist you now. But I want your assistance. No, you don't understand. We have the power to assist you.
Yes, the Orwellian doublespeak is always on display here in Ecuador and everywhere else in the world. So yeah, and of course all the rhetoric that goes along with those things were there with it. I'll just give one because it's a little funny. Mr. Correa, who is traveling in Europe, called the vote a, quote, triumph over political opponents who want to prevent his administration from governing as its democratic legitimacy, said Mr. Correa. So, again, 80% opposed to the reforms, passes complete democratic legitimacy.
Speaking of that, that's actually a good transition, the article that you have there in front of you about the raid on that local police station.
Television.
Because they say, local television station, because they have and I don't know if it's in that article, but there was a tweet that they, that whatever entity that was responsible for the raid came up with that said that we seized their equipment based on, this law and it was completely legitimate.
Yeah, they owed like a few dollars, so like, and they were in the middle of legislating it. Anyways, well, I'll jump into it since you brought it up. But so this is an article here. It says Ecuador government seizes TV channels equipment, leaving it off air, and this happened here locally in Loja. So there's a local TV station. I don't even remember what it's called. Let me find it. Ecotel. So there's a local TV station. I guess they only broadcast here in Loja. I don't have a television, so I don't know too much about this. But apparently they do a bunch of shows, and it's pretty widely watched here in Loja. So I'll just read a piece of this article. Accompanied by the police, Ecuador's Agency for Regulation and Control of Telecommunications, which is awesome that they have an agency to control telecommunications, seized the equipment of Ecotel TV, one of the most watched television channels in the southern city of Loja, whose signal went off the air. And yes, it does have the tweet, but it was in Spanish, so we can translate it for you. It says, on its official Twitter account, the Ministry of Internal Affairs published photographs of the event and ensured that human rights were fully respected in the process. The tweet was something like this. So it was like...
If you go to the next page, it might have it in English.
Does it have it in English?
Double check if they don't.
I didn't see it in English.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would translate to something like this. It's, so... I don't know what that... It's like, taking is a poor word. What do you do when you take someone's equipment and you're holding it? Confiscation. There you go. So it'd be like the confiscation of equipment was done with total respect for human rights. Oh no, well that's all it was. Yeah. So.
And there were some hashtags after
hashtags,
there,
yeah, derechos humanos, human rights. Then they tagged Policía Ecuador, the police, and the minister of the interior, or the minister of the interior sent the.
Okay, so there's not a hashtag for that, is there?
No, there's a at Min Interior EC. So the seizure of Ecotel TV equipment occurred. Oh well, you're right. There was a translation. The seizure of Ecotel TV equipment occurred with full respect for human rights. They
hashtag
they
human rights.
Busted in and broke their glass and stole everything.
Literally. Hashtag human rights.
There's a hashtag human rights here.
Break in somewhere with guns, steal, punch a couple guys in the face, take their stuff, and then say human rights.
Yeah. I mean, just to clarify, I don't think anyone was punched in the face, but point remains, obviously. I mean, only because they had guns, otherwise.
Yeah, there was just, some glass broken, some...
Yes. No, they literally went in and stole all their stuff, the police. And I'm not sure, I might be wrong. I know there was a previous time they had busted into the same TV station because they were in some dispute. If you talk about politics here against the government uses its force against you. So they had done that, previously. Let's see. This is the second. This is the same article. This is the second seizure the station has undergone. On December 5th, 2013, a police operation raided the premises in the early hours of the morning to confiscate equipment from Ecotel radio stations. So, not the first time they've enjoyed the fruits of government. It's a funny thing too, and we'll get into some of this stuff too. I mean, this is going to be a fairly negative podcast, I suppose, politically. I mean, there's just nothing good happening here politically right now. There's lots of opportunity, and maybe we'll have a chance to touch on that. But politically, and I think, anyone living anywhere else in the world can probably confirm that, it's much the same all over the world. But politically,
hashtag public goods.
right, or public service, or like, yeah.
Right. Yeah, that would be better, public service.
So let's see. According to Fundamedios, an Ecuadorian NGO that safeguards freedom of speech, Ecotel TV's owner, Ramiro Cueva, said that the seizure was motivated by Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa's words in his 454th weekly address called Citizens Links. On December 12th, branding Cueva, so this is the owner, Correa said this about Cueva, a bitter demagogue disguised as a journalist who only tells lies. He lies to try and harm the national government.
You know what's funny about that? Is like, if the shoe was on the other foot and he said that about the president, he would be in prison.
Literally. Like, they have,
But if you're, he's on the pulpit, 450 times and counting. Oh, this guy's a demagogue, he's this, he's that, but, I don't have to follow the rules because, I'm the president.
Right, and so that recently happened here, so there's a law in Ecuador, and I don't, I'm not a lawyer, but it's essentially similar to like libel and slander, except it's a crime, it's a criminal act, so
that you can go to jail for.
Yeah, so basically, like, if you say something negative about somebody that you can't prove to be accurate, which is like practically impossible to do, and they can show, and they don't have to show in any kind of definitive way. Basically, they can just say that you hurt their business or you hurt their reputation. They can sue you and you go to prison, and that recently happened where.
So how do you prove that somebody's a demagogue then?
Right. Well, I mean, for like you said, had that guy said that about Correa, he could be in prison right now. And so this happened recently where the mayor of Loja, apparently, and I'm a little fuzzy on all the details, so I'll just say what I know, and the rest I won't go into the details because I don't know them. But there was somebody who like worked at the municipio or had some working relationship with the government, said something negative about Chato, the mayor. He sued her, and she's now in prison. So, the mayor's putting women in prison for words. Because, he didn't like them. But that happens here. So, I could sue Darnell for saying, like, you said such and so about me, and if I could, like, show it. And this lady, I think, had said it on social media, so she couldn't deny it. He would go to prison. So. Anyhow,
hashtag Citizens Revolution.
Oh gosh, you're on a roll with the hashtags.
Well, we live in a social media world.
Yeah, well, you don't.
No, I don't. Thank God.
Darnell is off. Not on any. LinkedIn, I guess.
Yeah, I have a LinkedIn page, but that's it.
Yeah. So before we get into the rest of the bad news, let's chat a little bit about some stuff that's going on with the company and with what we're up to and what people are doing here in Ecuador.
I would say that's the good news portion of the podcast.
Yeah. For whatever reason, interest in buying properties has picked up dramatically through us anyhow over the last month or so. So we've, a lot of people seem to be catching on to the global story of like, hey, I better get to a nice place where there's a nice climate and secure my food and water and find a good place to live and find a place where people are nice and it's friendly and it's safe. And, Ecuador is certainly on that list for people. And I think this part of Ecuador is really starting to get discovered more so than it was even, 6 months ago. So we've been very busy showing properties, and and working with people who are on their way down or have made it down, which is really interesting in the face of some of the political stuff that's taken place.
Yeah, and I mean, what I would chalk that up to, certainly, the market outlook that you gave in the beginning, a lot of those trends are driving the lower prices here, which is making it more attractive for people to come. But I think as bad as some of the politics here are in the political situation in the country are, I don't know that that's something that you can hide from. I mean, if we're living here in Ecuador, so we're following the things that are happening in Ecuador. And, just because of that, we also are following what's going on in other places in the world. And as I, read different articles about things that are happening in the U.S., for example, where we're from, I don't see anything. I see the trends going in the same way.
Yeah,
so I don't know that
it's worse there. It's worse there.
So, it's hard to say, yeah, I mean, we're talking about these things because we're experiencing them. But if we were back home, we'd be talking about many of the same things.
Yeah, and I mean, that's true for all the countries down here. I mean, we know people in Chile and in Brazil and in Panama and other places where, many similar problems are taken. That's another, quick piece to hit on. Also, it's like there's really a lot of change going on right now. The sort of leftist governments of Argentina and here and Brazil and Venezuela and are on the outs. So they're looking like they may impeach in Brazil. Argentina, they just got slaughtered. The left just got slaughtered in an election, and same thing in Venezuela. And
was the president in Argentina?
Yeah. And here, elections are next year. We'll see. Of course, I don't put any faith in elections. I also don't put any faith in left-right. I don't want the right over the left. They're all crooks and they all steal and imprison you. But certainly in terms of being able to live life, the left is probably not so good for that. At least what it means for the left in Latin America.
Yeah.
So interesting sidebar on that too. It's kind of like regional change that we're watching, also here in Ecuador.
Right, and that was something that was interesting to me just in talking to people here. Latin America obviously made up of lots of different countries, but it seems as though, at least chatting with people who are from here, that trends that start in one country end up making it to others. And I think, some of the political things that you've seen in countries like Argentina, here, and Venezuela, Brazil are also, are things that are going to make it here.
Yeah, and you can already see that, obviously, with the shift of public opinion, which has been dramatic. I mean, when we got here, Correa was popular. Most people you talk to liked him. Like, you had your outliers, but... Right. Now, it's hard. I mean, there's people who still like them, but they're not many.
And also, too, I think one of the things that I was really struck by coming here is how effectively they're able to control the message from outside the country. People, when I was outside the country, I had a completely different perspective on the government before I came here and actually lived here, for sure. One thing I go back and think about is the whole Julian Assange case and how, Ecuador was out in front trying to protect him from all these governments that were trying to take away his human rights, quote unquote, #human rights. And now, they ended up turning him over to to the authorities that they were previously protecting him from. Yeah. Right. Then you had the situation with Yasuni, the National Reserve, where when the president first took power, he was talking about getting other major countries to essentially pay Ecuador not to develop Yasuni as a way of maintaining global biodiversity and all those other kinds of things, and capturing carbon and lowering keeping the maintaining a balance with the world's quote unquote carbon footprint. I think # is better than quote unquote. and so, then he turns around and says, well, now oil's low, so we're going to go and mine there. We're going to go and pull oil out of the ground and, forget everything I said before because these countries aren't going to pay us.
And by we, he means China.
Yeah. And so it's very interesting how they really craft and mold and maintain an image outside of the country that is really not true at all.
Yeah. Well, it's sort of like, if you look at what are people's opinions of the U.S. here, it's like land of the free, roads are paved with gold, life is great, and anybody who's from there obviously knows that, it's a very complicated picture in the U.S. There's places in the U.S. that don't have sewage, that don't have, go to Detroit and, tell me about the roads being paved with gold, or go to some places in the South where, where there's no running water, outside of, Manhattan and L.A. and Chicago, some areas of Chicago and some areas of Miami and some areas of here and there, the U.S. is not that way at all. So, it's kind of, it's a similar thing here with that. The government here is, anything but for freedom, but they sort of get portrayed that way. They're sort of like heroes of the left, I would say, outside of Ecuador. But, the left supposedly believes in civil liberties, and that's not the case here or anywhere else. By the way, just to touch on this really quick, holy God, has the weather been nice for the last couple of weeks. We've had like the hottest weather I can remember in Loja for this sustained of a stretch. I have to go show properties after this in Vilcabamba, so I'm wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and it's been shorts and t-shirt weather here for 2 weeks now, which is kind of funny because we had a client in town who was really looking to escape the heat, and he rolled in for the hottest week I've ever experienced in Loja.
And we're telling them, listen, this is the hottest it ever gets. He's looking at me like, But
beautiful, clear, sunny skies day after day here for this little period of time.
Yeah. And that's only natural, because if you're coming to a country for the first or second time and you're there for a week and you're saying, I didn't think it was like this, and as a real estate company, it's kind of in our benefit, I guess, or people perceive it that way, for us to tell them what they want to hear, and so they're going to be understandably skeptical. But if that individual is listening, trust me, it's not. It's not always like that.
So, jumping into a couple of topics more appropriate for people, in the process of thinking about moving to Ecuador or in the process of moving to Ecuador. Darnell recently wrote a blog. I think it's on the website already, the Cuenca Loja. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Darnell recently wrote a blog outlining some of the differences between Cuenca and Loja. You can check that out on the website, avecuador.com. But I just want to go through that verbally for people very, very briefly. A lot of people call us who are in that camp where it's either Cuenca or Loja that they're going to move to, or either the Cuenca or Loja areas that they're going to move to. So I'm going to give people a brief verbal rundown of differences. Darnell, jump in at any point. So, Loja, warmer, less people, more town-like attitude, and small, not a city-like atmosphere. Lousier restaurants, not as many cultural or fine dining experiences. Less crime, no crime essentially. Cuenca is also safe, but a little more crime. Practically no pollution, so less pollution. That's Loja. So then the advantages you'll have in Cuenca, and no expat community. So Loja, expat community, colder.
You said Loja when you meant Cuenca.
I just said Loja. Sorry. So Cuenca, expat community, colder. Many nicer restaurants, much better food options, international business options, international options in general. It's like an international city. People function that way. And traffic problems, which we don't have here in Loja. We have slightly, once in a while there's a little traffic in Loja, but Cuenca has legitimate traffic issues. Much more, more pollution. And what else?
Just more stuff to do.
Certainly. More activity, more
cultural
cultural
nightlife.
Events. Yeah.
they've got a film festival that they do there every year.
Art festival.
Right. All those kinds of things. So it's just, so I'd say entertainment-wise, aesthetically, it's just a lot more.
Oh, that's the other thing. Yeah, Cuenca's prettier, a lot prettier. Especially the downtown area, the architecture, much prettier, much nicer than Loja. It really just depends what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a bigger city with an expat community, good, great international restaurants, all that kind of stuff, you're looking for Cuenca. If you're looking for a smaller city, more undiscovered, slower, more relaxed, all those kinds of things, then you're looking for Loja. If you don't want to be cold as well, you're looking for Loja. If you're okay with some cool weather, you're better, then Cuenca's fine.
Right.
That do it?
Yeah. I think that about does it. Yeah.
All right. So there's a couple of just quick things worth touching on for people if you're thinking about coming to Ecuador and looking at properties. Looking at properties here is not like looking at properties in New York City or in Philadelphia or anywhere else in the United States.
You know what? We'll touch on this, obviously, but this might be worth doing an entire show on. So, yeah, anyway, go on.
Yeah. So it's like, what does it mean to look at, well, obviously, if you're looking at a property in a city or you're looking at a house on a lot, well, yes, that is, like, similar to, anywhere else. But if you're looking for land here, which many people are, if you're looking for land here, each property, at the very least, is going to be a half a day. And probably here in the altitude, having hiked a property for half a day, you're going to be shot and you're not going to want to go spend the other half of the day looking at another. Some properties are so big it's the full day regardless. So what does it mean? It means boots. It means hiking. It means, bringing water, bringing food, and, spending a day checking out a property, at most 2 in a day, if they're close by. And it's, you got to be in shape. It's strenuous. It's, you might fall.
You forgot one thing that they need to pack: a good attitude.
You sound like one of those school commercials or something, or
public service announcement or something.
Hashtag good attitude, right? But yeah. So I mean, I think people come here a lot with this misunderstanding of what it means to look at property. It means getting up in the morning, going out with your boots. Often we'll have a machete with us because we may have to, clear some areas to walk on. And the reason is because all of these properties that are big, that have land, if you're looking for, most people here, they want big piece of land, they want water, they want flat, they want place to grow food, they want all those kinds of things that Ecuador has in spades. But, you've got to see it, you've got to spend the day hiking it. And yes, there's usually trails, and there's, it's not like we're talking about, there's trails and you can walk. But we're in the foothills of the Andes, so you're going up and down. You're going, it's a significant enterprise. So if you're 60, 70 years old and you had knee replacement, you had some kind of physical ailment, or and you're looking for those kinds of properties, you've got to consider how you want to approach that, because you may not be able to see the property, and without seeing it, you're not going to be able to make a decision on on whether you like it or not, because these properties just you can't see them with your eye just at the border. You've got to go and explore them.
In many of them, even with a 4-wheel drive car, you might not really be able to see it well.
Yeah, and that's because
at least in this part of Ecuador. There are other parts of Ecuador when you're getting out towards the coast, but before you hit the ocean, where you can find larger pieces of really flat property. But the majority of properties here, you're going to have some flat areas, some plateaus, but a lot of slopes as well too.
Yeah, and the reason you're not going to be able to drive them is because almost all of these have been used for cow grazing. They're fincas that have been used to graze cows. So they might have a structure where the road comes in. They might be a little house there or something and some facilities, but the vast majority of the land is just cow trails. So just word to the wise there. If you're coming here to look at land, that's what you're in for. The other thing I think people maybe don't fully have their minds wrapped around, but are looking for land, is what it means to undertake a project here. I feel like a lot of people are looking for, they want that big piece of land where there's water and they can grow food and, do all this stuff. But they don't realize that to do that, you're building roads throughout the property. Usually, we'll find you, of course, a property that has access to it. But then internally on the property, you're building roads, you're building structures, you're working with the water. So, you're diverting water where you want it. You're, dealing with the whole water situation. You're building a house. It's a big undertaking. I think a lot of people kind of show up wanting all that stuff, but sort of wanting it already finished, and that's almost, that exists once in a while, but that's certainly not what most of these are fincas that have been grazing cattle for the last several hundred years. So you're doing all that stuff yourself.
And if you can find that, it'll be very rare, and there'll be a premium that needs to be paid for that. And I think that's also something that maybe isn't appreciated as much. The other thing I wanted to touch on related to this is the suburb versus city. So there's not, a lot of people are looking for properties, or a fair amount of people, enough people to bring this up, are looking for properties maybe that are just outside the urban limit, that are in a suburb where there's all this infrastructure ready to go. And here, development just happens much differently than it does in a place like the States. So, it's like you're in a city, you're either in the center or the outskirts, and that's the urban area. And you get outside of that area, and you're in the country until you're driving, until you hit the next city. So there's really nothing in between. If you want to be a real distance away from the city, then you're going to be away from those amenities that most people are looking for. Most people are looking for a place that they can, easily get to a U.S. style or North American style, European style supermarket, where they can get to shopping, where they can get to restaurants. And those, at least in this part of the country, those options are really few and far between. And certainly in Loja, that just doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that's because, we're in the foothills of the Andes, so all the cities and towns are built into valleys. So you've got the city or the town in the valley, and then surrounding that is mountains. And so, you don't have development there. So there is no suburbs. There's no Loja suburbs. There's just Loja and then country.
Right. I mean, there's parts of the city that may look like a suburb, but, they're not. It's not what people are expecting or thinking about when they're coming here and defining that as one of their parameters.
Yeah, like being within a close distance to the city, but outside of the city kind of thing. Like, there's a little bit of that just while you're still in the valley, and then no more.
Right. And, those places are not going to have their... It's not going to be like a U.S.-style suburb where you've got all of your conveniences right there. Like, no.
And that runs a fine line for people, because some people are looking for that, and then some people are looking for the untreated water, the area to grow food, the old colonial style houses, and you kind of have to choose one or the other. If you want the untreated water and the place to grow food and all that stuff, you've got to
isolation.
You've got to get out of the valley over to another valley or another area. If you're going to be close to the city, pretty close to the city, can we find you a few things? Yes, there are still some fincas available that are within 15 minutes of Loja. In fact, there's a few beautiful ones right now, but there's still some of that available. But in general, if you're looking to do those things, you're going to want to. You're not going to find a whole lot of properties that are also essentially in Loja.
Right. So I think the overall message is just, and I don't know that you can do this without coming here, really, which, presents some challenges for some people. But it's like, I think a lot of people need to come here to understand which parameters are ones that they can't do without and ones that they're willing to compromise on based on the situation on the ground. Because I think really that's the biggest challenge for people is just they have one set of expectations at one price point that they think they're going to get. And a lot of times, you know, they can maybe get some of those things that they're looking for at that price point. But if they want one or two more things, there's going to be an asymmetrical increase in the price for some of those things that I think people have is maybe a little bit of a challenge wrapping your head around.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you have a whole set of parameters in your head before you come here. And then you come here and you realize like a lot of them just don't apply. I mean, I know that certainly happened to us, and we've watched that happen with a lot of other people as well.
Right. Like I know with the property that we were looking for our development, we thought, you know, we were going to be much further out from the city than we ended up being. It's funny because the property that I was telling you about yesterday that I saw, that was something more along the lines of what we were looking for, you know, that, you know, I mean, it, and I'm very happy, obviously, with the property that we have, but it's like that was more so in line with my expectations. You know, I'm taking a look at that, you know, 2 years and 6 months later.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's what we're trying to do for people. You know, we're trying to find the best properties and make them accessible so you don't have to spend a year or two looking for them, as we did.
Right. I guess the overall point that I was just trying to touch on is that, you know, you and I look at properties all the time. You know, weekly we look at properties. And so to have done a dedicated search for that property and also just looking around for different properties based on different parameters that we know people who are working with us or people who we'd like to be working with us have and want, to have found that 2.5 years into like doing it all the time, it's like just trying to paint that picture for people in terms of what that could entail.
Yeah. No, it's exactly. Okay, I'll jump back to the news, I guess, real quick. Some international stuff. Peter Schiff, who probably a lot of you are familiar with, he says as of 18th of December, he believes gold is still going to 5,000. You know, he's often right, although often called wrong when he's right. So he reiterated his call that gold is going to 5,000. My favorite quote in this article is he's talking about the economy. You know, he doesn't think it's doing as well as some people would like to think. And he's referring to the Fed, and he says they're going to have to reverse course next year. They're going to bring rates into negative territory, and they're going to do QE4, and it's going to be bigger than ever. So, you know, agreed, Mr. Schiff. So that's interesting. Along those same, and that was from a CNBC article. Along those same lines, China stockpiled gold at accelerated pace in November. So China continues to increase their gold holdings. Let's see. So, you know, and this is in the same time that they're, you know, pushing for inclusion in the IMF's benchmark currency.
Well, now they are.
Yeah, they're in the SDR. Yeah.
And they continue to push for you know, other offshore centers and places to increase the circulation of the currency.
Yeah. So that's, you know, interesting only in, you know, if you're not familiar with the story. I guess it's interesting. If you are, then, you know, you already know that that's happening. Along those same lines, Zimbabwe has agreed to make the Chinese yuan legal currency after Beijing cancels debts. So that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think I forwarded this to you, and you responded to me and said, you know, the first shoe to drop or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I think we touched on it in the last. No,
did we? Oh, you might. No, yeah. Well, it came out. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. This is from the 22nd.
Okay.
Of December.
Okay, so we might have just talked about it.
Did we? Yeah, I don't know. You remember? I don't know. But whether we did or whether we didn't, very interesting. Fits into the whole story, which we've been trying to explain to you intermittently on this show, as China becoming the center or the balance of power shifting, from west to east, and China being at the center of that. So they're now expanding. For example, in Ecuador, the U.S. dollar is currency. Any time you can have a country use your currency, that increases demand for your currency. So China has now. It's funny too. They announced that the yuan will be legal tender in Zimbabwe. China canceled a whopping $40 million in debts to make that happen. I mean, it's like the net worth of one guy's plane over there. It's not exactly. There wasn't any trillions being forgiven here. Although that may have been all they had. But anyhow, so yes, Zimbabwe is now going to use the yuan. I expect that to be the first in a number of announcements like this as China's, takes over the world. Let's see.
In their quest for world domination.
Right. Yeah, we could probably hit on some of this stuff on the next show. Is there other topics you want to get into before we wrapped up?
Yeah, let's get into some of those opportunities on the coast that Will was talking about.
Yeah, so very interesting. We've got a very trusted contact friend of ours who's in the Puerto Cayo area.
I was just thinking, a good friend of the show.
Yeah, right.
Because we have a show now. This is a thing.
12th episode. Puerto Cayo, so you can look that up. It's Cayo. It's in a cool spot because it's not too far south of Manta, and so it's close enough to Manta and also close enough to Guayaquil and Salinas. Also, for point of reference, not all that far from Montanita and Alone. And Hippie Hapa, which is a little inland, but I think people also like that town. I haven't been to Hippie Hapa. I have driven that coast. I know you have as well. I don't remember Puerto Cayo specifically, but I was looking at the pictures on Google Images, and I was listening to my friend, and he says it's like white sand beaches and turquoise water, which I haven't really seen in Ecuador. But the pictures on Google seem to confirm that. Anyhow, there's some outrageous deals down there, like land being sold for example, 11 hectares. 11 hectares had a bunch of flat mango trees 40 feet tall with mangoes dripping off them, water, paved road access, 20 minutes from the beach, great for a farm. Obviously the weather is really, really nice out there, although it can get hot, certainly. And the price tag on that was around 20 grand or 25 grand, something like that. So, and there's several examples like that. Darnell and I were even considering perhaps buying some of them and just trying to resell them at a markup. I think that opportunity is there to a huge degree. Now, I don't know. I'm interested to see what happens over the next month or two with the laws that we're talking about. But just on an absolute basis, it's so cheap that even if intermittently there's some I don't know, uncertainty in with the law, with the political situation or the political climate, you'd be doing. And also, forgetting in the investment standpoint, if you're looking to live there, it's a great area. There's a lot of foreigners in the area, and you could set up your self-sufficient lifestyle there as well for a fraction of the cost, really. So cool opportunities there. If anyone wants to chat about those, get in touch with us and we can give you all the info.
You're going to be heading out there this weekend, right?
I'm thinking about heading out there tonight. It's like a 8 or 9 hour drive, so I'm not looking forward to that. But yeah, I'm thinking about heading out actually tonight to check out the whole area, see all those properties that are for sale, and potentially invest or list or whatever.
Yeah. So that could be the topic for the next show, is maybe a report of some of the good properties that you found and we can, give those a platform for people to hear about them. Anything else you want to cover while we're here? First podcast of 2016.
Yeah, no, not too much. Interesting time in the world. Certainly a lot going on. Great time to be alive, man. It's a lot of changes, a lot of opportunities, both spiritually and economically, and everything else. So it'll be an exciting year for sure. But there's a lot of crazy stuff going on here in Ecuador. But I certainly would say for anybody as a place to live, it's really hard to beat. Darnell and I are just extremely happy to have moved here, and life is good, man. Life is very good.
Speaking of that, I went out to lunch with some people the other day, and you had handled the situation up to that point, and I was showing the properties, and one person asked if we were a couple.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So you, of course, said yes. Of course, we've been together happily for 18 years.
Yeah. We met at Fire Island.
This was actually, they might listen to the show. I guess I can't talk about them.
Oh, jeez, that caught me off guard a little bit. I was like, "Pardon me?"
Perdón.
It's like, no, we're friends from high school. And that was pretty awkward.
I've also gotten that question once or twice, by the way.
Really?
Or at least, maybe not directly, but they kind of I said my partner Darnell will be able to show you the property, and they kind of look at me like, what do you mean by that? I'm like, no, my business partner.
So your partner, huh? His name is Darnell, huh?
Darnell gets at least one awkward black guy reference with every client that's down here as well. No.
Without fail, every time. Yeah, we also joke about that every once in a while. Well, couple of things I wanted to wrap up with, a couple of emails that you had sent out about some property alerts. So we had one property in Cucanama. It's an area of Vilcabamba. Just over a half a hectare, so if I'm not mistaken, 1.28 acres, completely flat, has a house that's how much is it? 128 square meters. Don't remember off the top of my head how much that is in square feet, but 2 bedroom, 1 bath, very nice finishings, very open design, open floor plan rather. About 90 to 95% finished. Needs some closets, kitchen cabinets, those kinds of things. Just basic finishings. An incredible deal. List price is $99,000. Very difficult to find a property of that size with those kind of amenities. So close to Vilcabamba. It's about a 10-minute drive, and also is set up with all your water and all your power as well too. So
nice views as well. Pretty nice views of the mountain across the way, and just this exceptional deal. It has a fireplace too.
Oh yeah, and that fireplace is sweet.
Yeah, 2 bedroom, 1 bath? Yeah, 1 bath.
Yeah, 2 bedroom, 1 bath. So very nice deal. Don't come around it very often. The seller is very motivated. Recently discounted the price.
$99,000 lot and house, U.S. style, in a sought after part of Ecuador. Wow.
Yeah. So certainly for anybody who has interest, we have the keys as well, so we can show at any time. Please feel free to get in touch with us for more information. We'll also be, I expect to have that on the website as well as our MLS in plusvalia.com page in the next week or so.
Yeah, Will's house also. I mean, it's just a really special house. Semi-informally, we did send an email out of it this week, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Or was it end of last week, whatever it was.
Oh, shoot. You know what? Some guy asked me about that, and I thought it was another property. So I'll call him back and let him know about that. Shoot.
Yeah, and we showed it a couple of times. I mean, there's some significant interest. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a deal in place over the next couple of weeks. But So, this guy who built it, he came here and built 3 houses, one for him to live in for the rest of his life, and then 2 to use for other purposes, and then he ended up deciding to leave the country and go to Brazil. But the house that 2 of them are sold. The one that he built for himself is still available. It is unbelievable house. It's the highest quality everything. It sits up on this mountain and just looks out. It's like the nicest views of any I've seen in Vilcabamba. It's 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and one entire wall of the house is glass that goes out onto a porch, and then all of that looks out over the valley. It's like you can't be there and not feel good. It's just amazing property.
4 hectares as well too.
It's on 4 hectares, not a whole lot of flat, but it's on 4 hectares, and he's asking, or it's firm price, but $189,000. It's below cost, as is the other one. It's below cost. Where the market here, you can find finished houses below cost. But if you're looking for that like artist's retreat or meditation retreat or just simply retirement getaway in Vilcabamba, this is as sweet as it gets.
It's got its water from Podocarpus as well.
Pure water, not treated. It's considered the best water in Vilcabamba. Also has mineral springs on the property, 150 fruit trees, not mature. They need a few more years, but 150 fruit trees planted.
A living roof.
A living roof. Also, he built it. It's a 1-level house, but very high ceilings. He built it to be able to expand. So if you want to make it into a 2-level house, you can do that quite easily. So sweet property. We just finished up the photos and videos from Madre Tierra. Those will be on the website this week. That's a hotel in Vilcabamba, also a great deal. We still have that property in Rumi Shitana. 2 people almost bought it, but it's still there. It's 3.2 hectares.
3.25, yep.
3.25 hectares, 2 rivers, one of them going through the property. That is very rare because rivers almost always act as borders. So 1 river that flows out of Podocarpus, pure water, going through the property itself, and almost all of those 3.2 hectares are flat. Has an old farmhouse, adobe farmhouse, amazing history. It's beautiful, fruit trees everywhere, cultivated, all kinds of cultivation, plenty of areas. I mean, there's 4 or 5 areas, huge areas that could be used to build or to cultivate in addition to the cultivation that's already there. Private, amazing climate, stays green year-round there as well. Phenomenal property. I mean, a property I know you and I have talked about if there was a way to purchase it ourselves. Just lovely. So.
Yeah, really is.
And then several others coming online, which we'll send out when we have them.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting the property that I saw yesterday under contract as well too, because I think that's extremely unique. Extremely unique.
Yeah.
Well, with that, thanks for joining us this week. First podcast of 2016. Again, you can reach us online at www.abecuador.com or toll free in the office at 1-888-999-0948. Thanks again for tuning in, and have a great week.